everyone knows what he did as a player. But Henry, I just kind of want to relive John Elway as a general manager because, especially covering the team since 2016, and have so many people just have a bad taste in their mouth. What he did his first 5 years as a general manager is honestly historic. I mean, it's never been done in the Broncos organization. Few teams have had the success that John had in his 5-year stretch ever in the NFL. Remember, he takes over in 2011, a year before the Broncos get Peyton Manning. He gets Von Miller with the number 2 overall pick. That was not a gimme. It seemed like Cam Newton was going to be the first overall pick, which he was. But then, was it Marcel Darius?
Yep.
And it was kind of like, do you take this guy? Do you take Von Miller? Without a doubt, he smashed that one out of the park with Von Miller. They go to the playoffs with Tim Tebow. He hires John Fox, who I think was a fantastic coaching hire to take the Broncos from Josh McDaniels, a total ruin, not just as a football team, but as an organization. He hires John Fox, picks Von Miller, takes Tim Tebow to the playoffs. Then, of course, we know what happens the next 4 years. They get Peyton Manning. On top of that, they get DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, TJ Ward, Darian Stewart. They load DeMarcus Ware. They load up on defense. They also get Wes Welker before that. They get Eric Decker. They get Emmanuel Sanders to replace Eric Decker. In 2013, John Elway builds the greatest offense in NFL history. And then just 2 years later wins a Super Bowl with one of the greatest defenses ever.
It's crazy. Again, like you mentioned it a little bit, but the Broncos were in a very dark place when John Elway took over. 4 straight seasons without a winning record. The last one, obviously, 4-12, gets you the number 2 pick. To get to 8-8 that first year, and then Peyton comes in, it's 13 wins, 12 wins, 12 wins. Like, there's not much more you could ask for.
No.
And that stretch in particular, obviously, was incredible. Like, just bringing Peyton Manning to Denver, that alone puts him in the conversation for best general manager in Broncos history. Regardless of what happens from there, it's like you just got Peyton Manning to Denver. And then on top of that, he goes and wins a Super Bowl, and they show up to another Super Bowl and all that stuff. It's a shame that things turn downhill from there, but it happens.
Yeah, it does.
You take it.
Just look at Bill Belichick. 20 years as like the best coach in the NFL, becoming one of the best coaches in NFL history, if not the best coach in NFL history. And now what's happened the past 3 years when he hasn't had Tom Brady? He's been a 500 coach. Report came out earlier this week that he may end his career, or it's more likely that he ends his career somewhere else than in New England. Things aren't going well there. And just 5 years ago, that was inconceivable to think like Bill's going to be kicked out of New England at some point. So typically every great story, whether it's a player, whether it's a coach, whether it's an executive, doesn't have a storybook ending. That's what made John Elway's career so awesome. He retired on top, back-to-back Super Bowls. Peyton Manning retired on top, although he didn't have the greatest statistical year, still went out as a winner. And that's why I think right now people may be like, yeah, John was great. I think in 10 years, in 20 years, even in 5 years, people are going to say John Elway was amazing. He was the GOAT. And obviously taking into his playing career, but even as an executive, people are going to look back and really just view the positives, that 5-year stretch. And I have one move that we haven't talked about that I think is probably the most underrated move that John did that people just don't talk about that much, and that's hiring Gary Kubiak. Hiring Gary Kubiak was an incredible hire because he moved on from John Fox. John Fox, all he did in Denver was have a tremendous amount of success. The only thing John Fox didn't do is win a Super Bowl. He got the team to a Super Bowl. He had a really good defense for most of the time here. On offense, he was obviously able to let Peyton Manning do his thing, and boy, did Peyton Manning do his thing. They won playoff games. They did it all with John Fox outside of winning a Super Bowl. And so John Elway fired John Fox, moved on from John Fox, I should say. They parted ways. Amicably, I'm not sure about that, but they parted ways. He had to go find someone that was going to be better than John Fox. And he did. He went out and got Gary Kubiak, and Gary Kubiak had probably the most impressive coaching season that I have ever seen in any sport. Gary Kubiak, the way he managed Peyton Manning's injury, Peyton Manning's decline. Peyton Manning, remember, before the season even started, he said, Peyton, we're not running your offense. We're going to change to kind of a hybrid of my offense and your offense. Just that in itself, to tell one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, no, we're not going to do it your way. We're going to kind of find a mixture and then have him buy in and then have it work was incredible. But then what Gary did throughout the back's end of that stretch, bringing Peyton Manning in midway through that San Diego Chargers game in Week 17, and then obviously what they were able to do in the playoffs. One of the best coaching performances that I've ever seen. And if they don't have Gary Kubiak, I don't think that they win the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And you forget about that because there's so many other pieces in there. You think like, oh yeah, Kubiak was the coach.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But there really was a lot that he did. And if they hadn't gone and won a Super Bowl, people might really be questioning the things that he did.
Yeah.
Like, it's the fact that it worked that makes it so you can't argue with it. I mean, that was one of Peyton Manning's worst seasons when he decided to switch the offenses. And maybe that's just Peyton declining, and if they had run his offense, it still wouldn't have worked out. But he pressed all the buttons he needed to press, and they wound up winning that Super Bowl, which is crazy. I mean, again, like, you just look at the success. Like, he's Elway's the GM for 10 years. You've got 5 winning seasons, 1 8-8 season, 4 losing seasons. Solid. That's solid. It's slightly better than average.
Is it a winning record overall? I don't know if you can
it's got to
crunch
be.
those numbers.
It's got to be.
Yeah, because they were way
easily,
in those winning seasons. They were way more above 500 than in their losing seasons below 500.
Definitely. So then you throw in the fact that you make 5 playoff appearances in there,
5 straight division championships.
Yep. You always get past the wild card round. I don't know that they ever had to play in it.
Was 2014? Did they have a bye?
Yes, I believe
they lost the first game they played in. Obviously, in 2012 they did as well, but they definitely had a bye in 2012.
Yep, and 2011, which I forgot about, they didn't have a bye, but they won.
So I mean,
not only are you consistently in the playoffs, you're making it through. I mean, the cut down from 12 playoff teams to 8 playoff teams,
right?
Which again, so just another step up. The Super Bowl appearances. Again, there's 32 teams. How often should you win the Super Bowl? Once every 32 years.
Right.
He did it in 10 years.
Yep.
Like all of the numbers also point out, like,
it's really true.
Ranging from better than average to holy shit, that guy was really good.
Right. And I like that you included even the bad times to show that he overall still a good general manager. Now, what they could have done, I guess they couldn't have actually done this, but how you could view it is, okay, what if the Broncos, instead of 5 great years and 5 dismal years, what if you kind of mixed them in? Would you take that? I think then you'd be competitive so often that I think it's easier to swallow. Or if the 5 years happened at the beginning, the bad 5 years, and then now we're sitting at the end of the 5 good years, people would say, well, of course we take that. It's just that we've been in the worst stretch right now.
Yeah.
So it's harder to view. And I mean, people would try to discount what John did. Like, well, Peyton Manning was the one that was able to bring in all of those free agents. Peyton Manning was obviously the one to orchestrate that offense. Peyton Manning was really the coach of the offense. It didn't matter what coaches were there. Peyton Manning does not come to Denver without John Elway here. So if John Elway's not here, then they don't get Peyton Manning. Then they don't get everything else. So you had to have that starting piece of John Elway in order to get Peyton Manning.
Exactly.
So if you want to say that Peyton Manning brought all of those people in, sure. It's hard to argue that a Hall of Fame quarterback playing at his prime, the best quarterback in the NFL, didn't influence a lot of those people. But if you don't have John Elway to bring Peyton in, none of those other pieces follow.
Definitely.